Hello and welcome to my studio. My name is Nafis White and I'm a sculptor. Right now, I work a lot in hair, not, you know, all the time, but a fair amount. And the work that I have in textures is an Afro Victorian hair work. That is a phrase or term that I have coined that basically means it is part of the African and Victorian hair traditions that I have merged. I've merged them for a couple reasons, and basically because of personal narrative, you know. So I'm mixed race, and I have family that is Scottish and English, and so the Victorian tradition very prevalent and prominent. Hello, uh, Queen Victoria uh, in England. So what the Victorian tradition is really is a memento mori tradition, which has a lot to do with honoring, and not necessarily always honoring the dead. You know, it just happened to be that when people were doing mourning wreaths, well, they're called mourning wreaths, but at the time people were alive, and they would say, "Oh, you know, let's create this work with all of the hair of maybe all of the women in the household." Aunts, grandmothers, et cetera, et cetera. And then wire work it all together to create really unique forms. And those forms traditionally, there is a piece called a gimp, which is made of hair, and there's incredibly fine wire work. I have gotten really, really good at doing that wire work. Um, Studied for a couple years. Well, not studied from anybody, but rather I collect these artifacts and then I look at them and I study them without taking them apart just to see what the work is like. And that's mainly because I also have a jewelry background as well as a sculptural background. So taking the time to note, the techniques, and then to create my own tools and expand upon that. So we go from things like this, which is a very common rosette, although the colorways are not common, you know. So what I like to do is mix in a lot of different colors. That's where a lot of the African American tradition comes in, right? And also with this, I grew my hair and learned how to do my hair in all these different styles. And then I take those styles and move them onto sculptural works, right? And so we see, actually, let me get up close, the three dimensionality of some of these works and also like how they become very flower-like. But then I create my own forms as well. So that's a lot of fun to do also. So why hair? I don't use human hair because there's so much history. And in these particular stories that I'm telling, or manifestations, or conjuring, as it were, to have all that DNA and to have all that history is okay if that's what you want in the work. And if that adds, for me, I build a very kind of ritualistic kind of environment before I start working on some of these hair works. And synthetic hair is important to me because it allows for me to imbue it the way that I want, right? With the intentionality that I have. These just came back from a show, but these are hair works. These are from the Burst of Light series, all hair held together by bobby pins. All of the work is actually. So I build substructures and then augment bobby pins so that they stay put. Now, these works are incredibly sound architecturally, which is creating a little bit of magic, but also honors the traditions of using seeing family members like put their hair up and whatnot. So I'm kind of taking a note on that and was looking into different ways sculpturally that I could do it so that there would be enough integrity so that the sculptural works would stand on their own. And 8 feet by 4 feet, trust me, they do. But the synthetic hair, back to that. um, yeah, it's really important. I also like and have been doing tests for the last few years of, is it color fast? How can I merge different colorways and create different patterning? And ultimately, I mean, there are abstractions, but I do feel like sometimes, different forms kind of come through. Each one is very individual and has its own personality, which is really exciting to me. So, but I have to listen to intuition when I'm in the space and working with them after I kind of clear the vibe. And I only work on them when I'm in a particular kind of mood. And that mood would be jubilant, present, active, positive, which is me most of the time, but I have to be very, very intentional about that with these pieces because they require a lot. And when I don't listen, um, I usually end up having to take them all apart. I did once take apart an 8 foot by 4 foot work because I wasn't listening. And the answer is absolutely. black black hair and black presence, black bodies in space is a revolutionary act. So to utilize materials, especially from beauty supply stores, from like black culture, yes, it is intensely, part, of the narrative. The other thing too is for me to be able to work with hair. I began a hair journey myself, so I decided to grow my hair out. And part of the process that you see here is developing and working on different techniques, African and African American, that then lend themselves to pieces like this, right? So it's also talking about heritage. I'm mixed race, so um, you know, got family from a lot of different places, right? Like Africa, Europe, the South, I was not immune to the slave trade. My ancestors were not. So, yeah, so all of that's there, which is a long way around saying that, yeah, the material is political. Um, our existence is political. Our day to day is political. And the reason why I use synthetic hair and not real human hair is because I have a ritualistic process all my own. So when I'm in studio, the only time that I work on the Afro Victorian works is when I'm in a particular headspace. And to prepare for that, I have to ready my area, right? So synthetic hair for me allows the material to take the intention that I have and the energy and the transference, right? It can be a good conduit. If I'm taking hair that is already, coming from someone's head, that is already, possessing all of that DNA and all of that history, which is fine if that is what you're bringing into the narrative. But since that's not part of the narrative that I'm delving into, I choose not to. So, the biggest takeaway from the year 2020, which has been a lot for everyone, um, I would say the biggest thing is to stay the course. As an artist, I have been less interested in like productivity. And I'm coming from a very Bauhausian model, so I'm a double degree holder from the Rhode Island School of Design, master's and bachelor's. hmm and so, with that kind of, energy at these institutions, and this one in particular about work begetting work, right? And, the cyclical and more is more, right? It's very difficult to break those kinds of patterns. So for me, I've taken 2020 to really be thoughtful and intentional and purposeful about what I do. And I'm less impressed about like how much. It's not about like how can you do all of the things more, more, more. It's about quality, the quality of the time that you spend, the quality of the research you're doing, the quality of the self care that you're doing outside of here, because it's a real ass pandemic going on, and civil unrest, and a pandemic of racism, like all of these things, right? So we're in the throes And so I just keep going back to Toni Morrison, honestly, and think about Toni Morrison talking about now is the time when artists come alive. And I agree with that. I agree with that fully, fully, and thoroughly because, and I understand not every artist is going to see this moment as an opportunity. Some people are really depressed. Some people are just trying to stay alive, you know? Real talk. Um, and I think for me, it has just been staying the course and remembering or honoring the fact that I have the strength to be a record keeper and to be somebody who is able to utilize this energy and these forces to create in a way that documents. And so that has been my calling for this year. Now, coming up, there's some incredible projects. In 2021, I will be in Los Angeles, an artist in residence at the Iris Project, which is a big deal and an invitation only situation. So I feel very, very, very honored to be a part of that in April. And in May, I will be in Ohio with Spaces and building out for a very large summer exhibition and going larger than I've ever gone on quite a bit of my work. So couldn't be more excited. So this winter for me actually continues this self-reflection, continues these journeys, continues these personal journeys actually of being an adoptee, for example, and continuing to find family as I'm, learning and relearning and discovering, aspects of my adoptive family. And then, also in terms of health and wellness, I tell this to people a lot is you have to be here, to continue these kinds of discourse, right? We have to stay, especially if you're a BIPOC person. It's really important that you are alive. So I've been on a journey of that nature for a while, and actually, and 100 pounds down from what I used to be, which allows me to be much more agile in my practice, and much more present as well. So there are a lot of things that I'm just concentrating on and making sure that, yeah, longevity.